Has this ever happened to you? You ever get so high you think everyone hates you while also worrying that you're gonna piss your pants for some reason? You feel like you're gonna lose your mind and never come back. They know I haven't seen Euphoria and they're all judging me for it. They think I'm weird, they think I'm really weird, they think I'm too weird to hang out with them anymore. Oh god, what is reality? Welcome back, everybody. If you're new here, I'm Josh. I'm really cool. I'm a funny, awesome guy. And here we do self-help together, but we don't take it so goddamn serious. Because, you know, we're all gonna die, and who cares? Terrible way to sell my channel. In today's video, we're talking about why weed makes us anxious and what we can do about it. So I've spent years, working on this problem for you. And I think I've genuinely found the root cause and a possible solution. So weed used to give me a bunch of like mini panic attacks, some macro panic attacks. And I spent a while going through the science of it, but really just through analyzing my own experience, I found a way through it to the point where now I very rarely get super anxious on weed. So let's get into it. To answer the question of why weed makes us anxious, we first have to go into why we smoke it in the first place. Obviously because it's fun, obviously. But the main reason is because it tends to slow me down. I think of my mind as just kind of like a Ferrari. It's just super fast, trying to do everything at once. And my focus tends to split into like 100 places at once, and I'm trying to hold all of them in my head at the same time. And what weed does is it slows down that Ferrari into something more like a sloth on ketamine. And as I slow down, it tends to tunnel my vision from 100 different shards into one singular focus. Because I'm just too stupid to focus on everything at once. And that feels amazing. Now here's why I get anxious. It's about control and vulnerability. So, as my brain slows down from a Ferrari to a Lexus to a Camry to a sloth in a K-hole, I resist it. And here's the irony, right? We smoke to slow down, but then we resist the slowing down because our brain wants to stay fast. And that resistance between where the drug is taking me and where my brain wants to stay is what causes the anxiety. But even that is surface level. So let's go one level deeper. We gotta go deeper. So why do I resist slowing down? That's the core question. If you tend to be an anxious person, or even if you don't, we get stuck in a threat detection mode. We're always looking outward for threats, things that could hurt us, things that could make us feel vulnerable. And to stay in that detection mode, we have to be hyper aware. Now this is an exhausting place to be, always, who's gonna hurt me, who's gonna hurt me? Which is why we like to smoke weed, because it lets us relax that muscle. But then as we get high and our focus starts to dwindle and we get dopier and dopier, our ability to detect threat becomes impaired. And that fear that you're not going to be aware enough to deal with a threat is what makes you feel anxious. That feels like a very true explanation to me of what's happening in my mind. So now that I understand that, what do we do about it? So now I have 4 things that I do when I'm feeling anxious on weed, and most of these I use even when I'm feeling anxious in general. So number 1, I remind myself that I want this, you know? I smoke because I want to get a bit cooked, I want to get a bit weird, and I want to relax. And when I start to resist that, I say, no, it's okay. You're not in danger, you're safe, you can allow yourself to relax. And the more I practice that, the more my threat detection system slowly starts to learn that it doesn't always need to be firing. Which is honestly a beautiful lesson I use all the time anyway, because if I'm constantly in threat mode, most of the time, I don't need to be. And you don't need to be either. Unless you're living in the Serengeti and there's like 7 tigers chasing after you, I think you can relax. If you are in the Serengeti, don't relax. Never relax. You gotta be on, dude. You gotta be ready, dude. Otherwise, chill. Number 2, if it's getting pretty rough, which it does sometimes, I remind myself, this too shall pass. I will always come back. I will always come back to sobriety. I've done some much more intense things than weed, let me tell you. I'm a very cool guy. And I've always come back. Always. Number 3, if it's not going away, I remind myself that this is an opportunity to hold space for discomfort. Sometimes it's hanging around, it's getting intense, it might be multiplying, and I remind myself that I can handle it. I can. I'm not gonna die. It's just a great opportunity to grow the muscle of handling anxiety in general, because there's no physiological difference between being anxious on weed or being anxious because of public speaking or because of you're gonna ask someone on a date. It's the same pattern of energy. So if you can hold space for it here, you'll be able to hold space for it everywhere else that you feel that anxiety. Number 4, this is everything all in one, in 2 words. Let go. Let me illustrate this with an example. So, right at the peak of my panic attacky days, I remember I smoked and I was waiting in an Uber to get driven home because I was too anxious to be around my friends. And I started having a panic attack in the Uber, in the front seat. And I remember thinking, I'm losing my mind, I'm never going to come back, I don't know what to do, I feel like I'm going to die. And I had a distinct moment where I said, in my head, what would happen if I just let this scary feeling in? What would happen if I just let my body relax and just let it in? And immediately, the anxiety came ramped right up, it peaked, the feeling felt almost unbearable. And then as soon as I fully released into it, Dissipated. Completely left my body. I couldn't believe it. It was one of those times I'm reminded that the only thing to fear is fear itself. I was afraid of the feeling of anxiety. I was afraid of the feeling of a panic attack. But as soon as I fully welcomed it, actively let it into my body, it flushed straight through. There's a great analogy someone told me of imagining things coming down through the crown of your head, and that the soles of your feet are like taps, and it flows from the top straight out through the bottom. That's what it felt like. The energy just flowed through me. Whereas when we resist, especially when we're anxious, when we resist, we're kinking that hose in our body and not letting the flow run through, and then it just builds up inside us. That's a pretty good analogy. That is what it feels like. So the more you can unkink the hose and let the flow run, the quicker you get through it. Now, maybe you don't just get anxious when you smoke, but you're anxious almost all the time, in which case I say, welcome to the party. Happy for you to be here. I get really anxious in the mornings, specifically. And if you do too, then I've made a video up here about what to do about morning anxiety. I would love to know if it helps you. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one. Bye!